Hello everyone, I'm Arena International Master and FIDE instructor Rishikesh Chavan. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's session of opening preparation, we are going to learn the Chinese Dragon. So let's start. Chinese Dragon is the variation of Sicilian defense. The game starts like this. So this game is played between Cuban Grandmaster Dominguez Perez and Magnus Carlsen. E4, C5. So this is Sicilian defense. Now, whenever white plays d4 and c and d pawns are exchanged, so this variation is also called as open Sicilian. So whenever black doesn't get to exchange that pawn, that c pawn with d4, in short, when white is not playing d4, white prefers to play d3. Such pawn structure or the such position is called closed Sicilian. Yeah, so this is the starting position of Sicilian defense. From this position, different variations will start. So here black is playing g6, which is the start of Sicilian Dragon defense. f3. So f3 suggests that white is going to castle on the long side, and with this f3 pawn, he is going to attack on the king side with h4 and g4. White prepares for long castle, and at the same time white wants to play bishop h6 so that he can exchange this strong bishop on g7. This g7 bishop is also known as dragon bishop. So this variation can be converted into Yugoslav variation of the Sicilian dragon defense. So in Yugoslav variation, black plays knight e5, and after bishop b3, he continues with queen a5 and rook f c8. So black will be attacking through c and b file, and on the other hand, white will be attacking through h file by playing h4, h5, etc. So this new idea is called as Chinese Dragon. Belgian master Henris wrote an article about variation for new in chess. In this article, he named the variation the Chinese Dragon since he was living in China when he began to analyze the move. So this variation is called Chinese Dragon because the author or the inventor of this variation, he was in China at the time he wrote an article on this opening preparation or opening variation. So here, Black's idea is to start to launch a direct and a quick attack through the B file by playing B5 and B4. So maybe he will continue with knight E5 first, and when bishop is pushed back, he can start with B5, B4. Bishop b3. So this is the main move for white. Instead of bishop b3, white has few other moves as well. White can continue with playing either h4 or king b1. So after h4, game may progress like this: b5, bishop b3, knight a5. So here black has few options in mind. So black wants to play knight c4. So after knight c4, it is forced for white to capture the knight because this knight is forking this strong dark square bishop and queen. And after knight c5, c4, bishop into c4, black is going to play pawn into c4, and that way this file will be open. And because of this pawn, black pawn on c4, white won't be able to block the b file by playing knight b3. So black will launch his attack through open b file, h5. On the other hand, white will continue his attack through a file, h file, sorry, knight c4, bishop into c4, b into c4. So this is one variation. Also here, after this b5, instead of pushing the bishop back, white can continue with knight d into b5. So here white is accepting the sacrifice. Knight e5, forced bishop a2. If the bishop goes back, then this knight falls. Queen a5. So that knight on b5 will be in constant pressure. Knight d4, rook f c8, and as you can see, All the heavy black pieces are lined up against white's king, and on the other hand, white's attack is not yet started. It's in the middle stage of the board. One more variation is that after this b5, white can capture this pawn with bishop. So here we have knight into knight. So you can say this is removing the defender. As you can see on this bishop, there are two defenses, and this is one attack. And after the c6 knight move, there will be a second attack on the bishop. That is why black will remove the defender on d4. So here, if white plays bishop into d4, then he is losing the piece straight away. So he is forced to play bishop into d7, knight into c2. So you can say black is going to lose that knight, and for that knight he will be getting this bishop. So black is thinking about getting a pawn before the knight is captured. Knight into c2, queen into c2, knight into d7, and this is a clearly winning position for black, as he has already got an open file on this side of the board, and black's king is safe compared to white's king. White's king is in the firing line. Rook is already on the open b file, and soon other heavy pieces will join the attack by playing queen a5, rook f8, etc. So this line is suitable for black. So that is why accepting this b5 pawn after h4, accepting the offer or accepting the sacrifice is not a good idea. So instead of that, because instead of h4, white can even try king b1. So there follows knight into d4, bishop into d4, b5. Again the same idea, pushing the b pawn ahead, a5. So here he wants to play a4 and then b4. White must strike in the center, because as you can see, white's attack on the king side has not yet started. It will take a lot of time for white to launch an attack on the king side through h file. So that is why, to counter this wing attack started by black, white is breaking the center. So white is following the rule which says every wing attack must be countered by the break in the center. So this is what white is following. Now white's idea is to play bishop into knight, and that way he will get this bishop for free. So this is forced, and again this is a double-edged position. There is one more option after king b5. Instead of knight into d5, black can continue with knight a5, bishop e2. If this bishop goes back to b3, then again black will continue with his own his main plan, his original plan of b5 and b4. So that is why, to stop this b5, white may retreat his bishop to e2, but black is going to play b5 anyway, any which way. So here, by sacrificing the b pawn, black has successfully opened the b file, queen c7, and now the idea is to play rook f8. So that way, as b2 pawn is pinned, white's knight on c3 is beat v, and after rook f8, black can win that knight by playing queen into c7, c3. So force knight b3 to unpin the b2 pawn, knight c4. Again the idea is same, rfc8, and then this check can be given. Once this pawn is moved, queen can get access on the c3. Even this bishop will be open through this line. Even he can sacrifice a pawn, knight over here by playing knight into pawn. So lots of attacking lines are getting opened. Bishop into c4, queen into c4, and as you can see, again white's attack is stuck on the king side. It is not yet started. On the other hand, black has already started with the attack. Most of the pieces are participating in this attack. Again, the black is planning to play rook f8, and bishop e6 will do. So that is why, in this position, white played bishop b3. Knight a5. Knight a5 is compulsory, so that this bishop will be opened and this bishop will support the advance of b pawn. Knight e5 can also be played in this position, but then there follows f4, and as b4 is not yet played, black will have to play knight g4, h3, knight into e3, queen into e3. This position is slightly better for black, only because white's dark square bishop is gone, and that way no white piece can stop this dragon bishop on g7. But this is quite playable for white. It's not totally lost. But in this game, Carlsen continues with knight a5, bishop h6. Instead of bishop h6, white can try playing h4 or g4. So sometimes white opens the h file first and then plays bishop h6, or sometimes white plays bishop h6 and bishop into g7 first, and then he start to open the file with h4 and h5. So here Perez started with bishop h6 first. Now instead of bishop h6, if he plays g4, then g4 will be met with b5, bishop h6, and then there follows bishop into h6, bishop into h6. So this variation will be transposed into the main line of this game. Or instead of bishop h6, white can even play king b1, b5. Again the same idea, pushing the b pawn and opening the b file, h4, knight c4, bc4, bc4. Again this position we have already discussed. It is better for black as b file is already open, and because of this c pawn, white cannot block the b file with knight b3. So in this position, white played bishop h6, bishop into h6. Normally black won't capture the bishop, because then the queen will come deep inside black's position. But in this position, it is safe to capture the bishop. It is safe to allow white to play queen into h6, because the h file is not yet opened. And once this queen is moved from this king side or the queen side, I would say, then queen side is slightly weak or loose, and black can use that to launch a strong attack against white's king. b5, again the same idea of Chinese dragon, g4, knight into b3. Here playing e5 is a mistake. So here black may think about playing e5, but e5 runs into knight f5, and after knight f5, white is going to win the game. Black will resign very soon. Of course, because of knight f5, queen g7 checkmate is coming up. If he plays pawn into f5, then there follows pawn into f5, and soon through this open g file, checkmate will come. So capturing this knight with the pawn is very difficult, or it's impossible for black. Even if he captures with the bishop, uh, white will open the lines with g into f5. So that is why e5 is not a very good move. So knight into b3 is better. Knight into b3, b4, knight d5, knight into d5, cd5. Now, in this position, whenever this h file is open, white wants to execute a checkmate on h7 pawn or h7 square. Normally, this checkmate is not possible because of the f6 knight. So that is why white's main plan is to play knight d5 and remove this knight. Now in this position, black's f6 knight is already removed, but as you can see, the h file is not yet open. So that way, white will white will have to spend some time to open the h file, and in the meantime, black will find some counter attack on the other side of the board. Rook b6 is a very tricky move. it protects the d pawn. Now black is trying to play e6. So after e6, d into e6, bishop into e6, this diagonal is open. And after this d6, d5 pawn is moved away, and this e7 pawn is gone. This d6 black pawn is an isolated pawn, and white will try to win that pawn. That is why rook b6 is a nice move. It supports the pawn, and at the same time it allows black to play moves like rook a6, and then he can attack through this open a5. e5, in pass, f into e6. So here, instead of playing bishop into e6, black chooses to play f into e6. So the idea is that these two pawns will remain strong in the center, and these two pawns are controlling a lot of important squares in the center. At the same time, black is getting this open f file. So now white has to worry about this f3 pawn. Rook e3, rook f7. Again, rook f7 is a multi-purpose move. Black can either play king f8 to double the heavy pieces on the f file to win the pawn, or he can continue with playing something like bishop c8 and either bring the rook on the c file. Also, if the h file is open, then this rook will support the future checkmate on h7. Now knight d2 is a passive move. It is blocking the rook, and white played this move to support the pawn on f3, but at the same time its king side is slightly exposed. And to stop this knight's advance, maybe white is trying to move this knight to either e4 or c4. So that is why black plays d5. So that way both the squares are controlled by the pawn, and knight is not doing anything. Knight b3. uh, it looks like white had played this knight d2 move intentionally. White wanted black to commit his pawn to d5, so that these two squares are weak, and now white can use these weak squares for his pieces. So we can put the rook in this cavity on e5. Even this c5 square can be used with the knight, and that way there will be pressure against black's e6 pawn. In c7, king b1. It is always wise to move the king away from the firing line. Rook c8. Again, it is a multitasking move or multi-purpose move. Black is trying to play either rook c8, so that rook queen into pawn check can be played, or he can even play rook b to f8. That way, once the rook is doubled, he can capture this f pawn for free. It's kind of mistake. So here, uh, white is trying to attack this weak pawn. So white is hoping to find some counter attack through the e file. So this double rooks will be joined by this knight very soon, and that way this e6 pawn will be under a lot of pressure. And once the pawn falls, this whole file will be controlled by white, and that way white is trying to find some compensation or some attacking ideas through the open e5. But black is ready. Of course, black is not letting white to execute all of his plans. Forced to stop queen into c2 check, queen b6. This is a very interesting move. Now, if white plays pawn into pawn, then there follows rook into f3, and now lots of lines are opened around black's king, even or on white's king. Sorry, even black's king looks exposed, but these pawns or these rooks are stopped by the e6 pawn and this bishop. So that way, white will take some more time to execute his attack. But on the other hand, as you can see already, almost all the black pieces are attacking white's king, and White will have to play well, defend his king. D4. D4 is played to stop this queen, because again queen b8 is very strong. Queen b8 check, and then queen g1 check, sorry, queen g1 check, and queen can pick up this pawn on g4. So that is why white played d4 to stop the queen. Bishop b5. The moment the d3 pawn is moved, this diagonal is open, and black is using this diagonal to his benefit. Check. By pushing the white king on a1, black has highlighted the back rank weakness in white's position. Queen into d4. Of course, it's a queen sacrifice, and queen cannot be taken. If he accepts the queen, then the back rank check will follow very soon after rook c1. So instead of capturing the queen, which is untouchable right now, white continues his attack through e file. So he's trying to play something like rook e1 check and all. So rook e8 check, rook into rook into e8 check, king goes to f7, queen f8 mate. But it's black's turn now. So it starts with rook f1 check, forced, queen into g4. Okay. Yeah, so here one pair of rooks is exchanged, and now it looks impossible for white to execute a checkmate on the black king. On the other hand, white's king on the a1 is still very weak. Rook into c5 is not possible because rook f8 is a checkmate. So the rook on c8 should remain on the 8th rank to guard the back rank checkmate. Queen e2, attacking the rook. Even white's rook is guarding this back rank checkmate. If the rook is not over here, then straight away it's a mate. So now the knight is under attack. Knight, there are two attacks on the white knight, only one defense. Forced. If he moves the knight away, then again this is not very good, because after rook into rook, maybe knight into rook and all, the knight will be pinned by playing queen to e1. Also, these pawns will start moving ahead, and they will disturb this pawn structure, and that way white's king will be more exposed. Again, queen into bishop is not possible, because after queen into bishop, queen into queen, and knight into queen, rook into c1 is mate. And as you can see, knight into e6 is already not possible because of rook into c4. So queen moves to c2. White must defend his knight and the back rank both at the same time. So all the white pieces are busy in covering these weaknesses. White's position is very tricky. If white wants to remove back rank weakness, if he plays this b3, then his king is exposed to this diagonal. And if he plays a3, the way he played over here, even after playing a3, his back rank weakness is not removed. It's still there because king cannot come up on a2. And now the king is totally exposed, and now black can begin his final attack. Queen d5, threatening queen a2 mate. So forced, or else queen a2 is a checkmate. White is trying to find safe squares for his king. On the other hand, black is not only pushing his passed pawn ahead, but at the same time is trying to corner the king so that he can give checkmate easily. Bishop f7, saving the bishop. This is the final moment in this game. Black is already winning. White is trying hard to save this game. And finally white resigns because there is no point in continuing this game because he was already two pawns down in this position. It's not possible for him to save this game. For example, if he plays something like this, then this check can be there. Bishop into b3 is coming up. Even if the queen moves somewhere, queen b2 checkmate is possible. And on the other hand, as all these pieces are stuck, black can continue pushing his pawn ahead. So that way, it's a totally hopeless position for white, and white resigned in this position. So this is the Chinese dragon for you, where black plays rook b8 and then starts with b5 and b4 to open the b file. So I hope you understood whatever we have discussed today in this opening, and we will bring more such openings to you under the under our section, the opening preparations. Thank you very much, everyone.